Stop scrolling. If you call yourself a queen but still chase people who don't even respect your presence, we need to talk. Let's be real. Crowns don't mean a thing if you're kneeling for crumbs. This is your wake-up call. A high-value woman is not defined by how she looks, but by what she tolerates. If you want to be magnetic, unforgettable, respected, you must cut these toxic habits like dead weight. Are you ready to level up, or are you still living for likes, lies, and little men? Let's begin. Stop overgiving to underdeserving people. This is where most women lose their power without even realizing it. You give your energy, your kindness, your love, your time, all in the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll value you more. But here's the truth. No one will value what you constantly give away for free. You keep pouring into people who never even bring a glass. You become the emotional therapist, the motivator, the one who always shows up. And they come and go as they please. Why? Because you've taught them that your love has no boundaries. That your presence is a guarantee, not a privilege. And the moment people start seeing you as a convenience, they stop treating you with care. Let me tell you something. If you have to keep proving your worth, you're probably offering it to the wrong people. Look around. How many times have you cancelled plans for yourself just to be available for someone else who barely texts you back? You skip meals to help them, lose sleep over their drama, sacrifice your own needs to make sure they're okay, and in return, they forget your birthday. They go days without checking in. They disappear when you need a shoulder. You are not supposed to bleed for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. Take a look at your workplace. You work overtime, pick up extra projects, fix other people's mistakes. And yet, your name is never brought up in promotions. Why? Because the more you overgive without setting a limit, the more people assume that's your role. You become invisible while carrying the entire system. They don't see you as an asset. They see you as expected labor. Your silence, your sacrifices. They don't earn you respect. They teach others how to use you without thanks. And in relationships, let's go there. You text first every time. You remember anniversaries. You forgive too quickly. You love loudly while they barely whisper back. You tolerate being almost loved. You sit there accepting breadcrumbs while convincing yourself that someday they'll see your worth. But girl, if they couldn't see it when you gave them everything, it's time to stop mistaking loyalty for self-betrayal. You can be a good person and still walk away. You can love deeply and still say, I'm done. You can care and still create distance. The idea that real love is selfless doesn't mean it should be self-destructive. Look at mothers who give so much to their families day after day, but never ask for help. Never pause to care for themselves. Eventually their health breaks down, their spirit feels drained, and resentment builds silently. Why? Because overgiving is not noble, it's exhausting. And it teaches your children that it's normal to forget yourself. Even in friendships. Have you ever been the one who always listens, always supports, always remembers, but when you break, no one notices? That's not friendship. That's emotional exploitation wearing a friendly mask. True friends pour into you too. They don't watch you drown while talking about their own rain right now. The minute you start watering down your standards just to be accepted, you start poisoning your power. There's nothing wrong with wanting loyalty, honesty, consistency, and emotional maturity. But what happens? You speak up about it and suddenly you're too much. You say, I don't want to be with someone who plays games. And they call you dramatic. You say, I won't tolerate half-effort energy. And they label you hard to love. No, You are not hard to love. You are just refusing to be loved halfway. Let's talk about dating. You go on a date. He's late. Shows up without any effort. Talks only about himself. And at the end of the night, he jokes that you're high management for expecting a little chivalry. So the next time you lower your expectations, you say less, you pretend you're okay with whatever, and slowly you vanish into a version of yourself that exists only to be liked, not to be respected. Or in friendships, you have boundaries. You don't like gossip, you expect loyalty, you value deep connection over shallow attention. But when you express this, some people pull back. They say you're boring, too intense, or not fun. So what do? You start tolerating surface level energy, meaningless conversations, being the second option, and again, you shrink to fit into a space that was never built for your soul. In the workplace, it's the same. You speak clearly. You demand fair treatment. You refuse to be interrupted in meetings. And suddenly you're labeled bossy or aggressive. But if a man says the exact same thing, he's called a leader. So what happens? You hesitate. You overthink every email. You add smiley faces and exclamation points to soften your strength. You say sorry before making a valid point, just to make others comfortable. And yet, comfort never comes back to you. We've been taught to fear being alone more than we fear losing ourselves. But standards are not walls. They're doors. They don't keep people out, they let the right ones in. The ones who recognize your value without you having to shout it. The ones who match your energy without you begging for it. The ones who see your strength and say, I want to rise with you, not can you tone it down. You don't owe anyone a diluted version of you. You don't have to apologize for saying, I want a partner who communicates. That's not high maintenance. That's emotional safety. You don't have to feel guilty for wanting friends who actually show up for you. That's not being needy. That's being human. And you definitely don't have to say sorry for expecting to be treated with the same love, loyalty, and effort you give so freely. Think about the women who settle, the ones who say, maybe I'm asking for too much, when really they've just been surrounded by people who give too little. They end up in situationships, fake friendships, or toxic workplaces, all because they stopped honoring their own standards. But that's not strength. That's self-abandonment disguised as compromise. And let's not forget the guilt. The maybe I was too harsh. The maybe I should have given them another chance. No. Every time you choose your standards, you're choosing your future. You're building a life where peace isn't negotiable, where love isn't confusing, and where your voice isn't silenced for the sake of someone else's ego. So next time someone tells you your standards are too high, smile and say, maybe your effort is too low. Stop romanticizing red flags. Stop calling chaos passion. Stop calling control love. Just because someone is intense doesn't mean they're invested. Just because someone is persistent doesn't mean they're pure. And just because someone can talk smooth doesn't mean they walk steady. We need to stop dressing up toxic traits in pretty words and calling it fate. You're not in a fairy tale. You're in real life. And in real life, the guy who constantly checks your phone, questions your every move, and isolates you from your friends isn't just protective. He's controlling. That's not love. That's fear disguised as affection. But too many women confuse possessiveness with passion, because we've been conditioned to believe that love should be hard, messy, and painful. No. Love should never feel like war in your own heart. You're not meant to lose sleep over someone who says they love you but disappears when you need them the most. That's not, he's just going through something. That's emotional unavailability. Stop making excuses for people who consistently make you feel uncertain. Consistency is love. Mixed signals are manipulation. And if someone keeps leaving you confused, it's on purpose. Because confusion is how control survives. And let's talk about anger. He yells, slams doors, gives you the silent treatment for days, and then apologizes with flowers and charm. You tell yourself, but he's just passionate. No, that's not passion. That's emotional abuse wrapped in short-term kindness. You are not a rehab center for broken men. You're not a sponge for rage. A high-value woman doesn't absorb pain to prove her patience. She recognizes toxicity and walks away with her peace. We need to stop thinking we can love people into becoming better. You cannot outlove someone's trauma. You cannot pour so much goodness into them that they magically transform. You're not their savior. You're not their mother. You're not their fix. You are a partner, not a project manager. Every time you try to justify their red flags with, I know he has a good heart, you're handing your self-worth over to someone who's already proven they can't hold it. Look at your friend who's always canceling plans for her toxic boyfriend. She doesn't laugh the same anymore. She doesn't shine like she used to. But she keeps saying, you don't see the side of him, I do. That's the trap. That private version of him, the one he only shows when no one's watching, that's not love, that's strategy. Because if it were real, it wouldn't need hiding. Real love is loud in how it shows up, not just in how it whispers. Even in your past, how many times did you ignore the red flags? He belittled your dreams, mocked your emotions, made jokes at your expense, and you told yourself, he's just being honest, or that's how guys are. No, that's how boys are. Real men uplift, real men respect, and real men don't need to dim your light to feel powerful in your glow. Your standards are not too high. Your history just had too many people who crawled under the bar, and you let them because you saw the potential, not the reality. But potential doesn't build a relationship. Patterns do. Look at what they do, not what they say. Words are easy. Actions, that's where the truth lives. And no, their childhood trauma is not a free pass to damage you. Everyone has pain. Everyone has a story. But growth is a choice. If they're choosing to bleed on you rather than heal themselves, you are not obligated to stay. You deserve love that doesn't come with a disclaimer. You deserve peace that doesn't show up only after the storm. You deserve to be chosen clearly, consistently, and calmly. So, you appeal to the chosen. Clearly, consistently, and calmly. Now, Shelly, you told me that your story is often unsustainable. You've told me that you can scarcely give the customer what they want. You've told me that it takes time to build a story which needs to be built. You've told me that you can scarcely give the customer. Stop turning red flags into rose petals in your mind. Stop calling chaos chemistry. Stop thinking you're cold for leaving. You're wise. Because when you stop romanticizing red flags, you start building a life that isn't built on broken glass. What you see now is not all there is. Just because life looks dark today doesn't mean light isn't waiting around the corner. Just because you're in a season of confusion doesn't mean clarity isn't coming. Just because you're stuck doesn't mean you're done. This moment is a page, not the whole story. But the problem is, when you're deep in the storm, it's hard to remember the sky ever looked blue. You wake up feeling uninspired. The job is draining, the relationships feel hollow, and every day starts to blur into the next. You think, maybe this is all life has for me. But no, This is not your final destination. It's a chapter of development. Don't confuse. What you see now is not all there is. Just because life looks dark today doesn't mean light isn't waiting around the corner. Just because you're in a season of confusion doesn't mean clarity isn't coming. Just because you're stuck doesn't mean you're done. This moment is a page, not the whole story. But the problem is, when you're deep in the storm, it's hard to remember the sky ever looked blue. You wake up feeling uninspired. The job is draining. The relationships feel hollow. And every day starts to blur into the next. You think, maybe this is all life has for me. But no. This is not your final destination. It's a chapter of development. Don't confuse discomfort with defeat. Some of the greatest transformations happen in silence, when no one's clapping and everything feels like it's falling apart. But what if it's not falling apart? What if it's falling into place? Remember that student who failed the same subject twice and thought she wasn't smart enough? She now runs her own business. Why? Because she realized that a setback is not a sentence, it's just a scene. She didn't stop at the failure, she used it as fuel. The rejection you face today might just be the redirection you need tomorrow. The person who ghosted you, maybe they were blocking the space meant for someone who could truly see you. The job that didn't work out, maybe that's because your real path isn't in a cubicle, but in creating your own lane. We often judge our lives by what's visible. The followers, the finances, the results. But real growth is invisible at first. A seed doesn't bloom the moment it's planted. It has to go underground in darkness, with no applause, no validation. But eventually it rises, stronger, deeper. Maybe right now you're in that dirt. You're buried in responsibilities, self-doubt or heartbreak. But buried isn't the same as broken. You're not buried. You're planted. It's protection. If you got everything you wanted right now, before you were ready, it would feel like a blessing that breaks you. But life is smarter than that. It waits until you're ready to receive, not just to wish. We forget that transformation often looks like chaos. That's why caterpillars don't turn into butterflies with glitter and ease. They dissolve completely. They lose shape. They break down. They become unrecognizable. And then they rise. That's not magic. That's they use shape. They break down. They become unrecognizable. And then they rise. That's how it works. And that's how they were cut. Process. Just because your life looks messy right now doesn't mean it's meaningless. It means something is being made new. And what you see now, the stress, the confusion, the uncertainty, is not all there is. Even pain, as cruel as it feels, has purpose. That heartbreak, it taught you what you won't tolerate again. That betrayal, it showed you how deeply you need to protect your peace. That failure, it made you hungrier, wiser, and more focused. Life doesn't always give you what you want, but it always gives you what you need to grow. You're not stuck. You're being still. There's a difference. Stuck is when you've given up. Still is when you're preparing. Still is where the shift happens. What you see now, the quiet, the waiting, the loneliness, it's not your ending. It's your elevation. What's being built is deeper than visibility. It's character, it's resilience, it's power that doesn't need applause. Don't trust your emotions more than your evolution. Your feelings might scream, "This is it," but your future whispers, "Keep going." Because what you see now is only the surface. What's coming? That's the masterpiece. Stop comparing yourself to other women. You weren't created to be a copy. You weren't made to fit in her dress, her body, her timeline, her journey. The moment you start comparing, you're not seeing her power. You're forgetting your own. You don't need her glow to validate your fire. You are a force. But you keep shrinking every time you scroll through a highlight reel and start doubting your real life. She posts a vacation and suddenly your job feels boring. She buys a house and your rented apartment starts looking small. She gets engaged and your single life feels like a punishment. But what if I told you, you're not behind. You're in alignment with a life custom designed for you. You see her chapter 20 and start doubting your chapter 3. That's not fair to you. You don't know what it took for her to get there. You don't see the nights she cried, the battles she fought, the pain she hides under that perfect picture. A woman once told me she hated herself every time she walked into a room full of confident women. She'd lower her voice, cross her arms, and try to disappear. She thought she was less, until she realized those women weren't better, they were just louder. And loud doesn't mean worthy. Now she walks in with her head high, not because she's the loudest, but because she finally believes she belongs. That shift didn't come from changing herself, it came from changing her inner dialogue. You're not supposed to look like her, sound like her, move like her. You're supposed to look like you, move like you, and live like you. Even the sun and the moon shine differently, but no one questions their brilliance. So why do you question yours? Just because someone else is winning doesn't mean you're losing. This isn't a race, it's a journey. And if you're constantly looking sideways, you'll miss the magic that's already growing under your own feet. Think about it. How many times have you changed your outfit because you saw what someone else was wearing? How many times did you second guess your idea just because someone else did it first? That's the trap. Comparison doesn't inspire, it distracts. It tells you you're not enough, when in reality, you're just different. And that's your superpower. I knew a girl who used to compare her beauty to Instagram influencers. She'd edit her pictures, skip meals, hate her reflection, but one day she looked at a photo of herself as a child, smiling, unfiltered, untouched, and cried. Because she realized that little girl was never meant to grow up hating herself for not looking like someone else. She was meant to grow up and become herself, not a mirror of someone else's life. We're all running our own marathons, but we're out here acting like it's a 100-meter sprint. Her success isn't stealing yours. Her glow up isn't delaying yours. There is no shortage of beauty, brilliance, or blessings. The only thing blocking you is the belief that your lane isn't enough. But listen to me, you are not behind. You are not basic. You are becoming. When you stop comparing, you start creating, you start building, you start blooming. You stop trying to win the crowd and start connecting with your own voice. Because the world doesn't need another version of her. The world needs the original version of you. So next time you look at her and feel like shrinking, pause, breathe, and remind yourself, her beauty is not your absence. Her power is not your silence. Her wins are not your losses. Because real queens don't compete. Real queens collaborate, cheer, and crown each other. And the day you stop comparing yourself to other women is the day you finally meet the woman you were always meant to be. Stop staying silent to keep the peace. Because if your silence costs you your self-respect, it's not peace. It's a slow self-destruction. So many women were raised to be agreeable, polite, non-confrontational, and now they're walking around swallowing pain just to avoid making someone else uncomfortable. But let me ask you something. Why is your voice the first thing you sacrifice when the room gets tense? You think you're keeping things calm, but you're not. You're just bottling up storms that will eventually erupt. A woman once told me she stayed quiet every time her partner made a passive-aggressive joke about her in public. She'd laugh it off while dying inside. She didn't want to be the dramatic one. But slowly, she lost her joy, her shine, her confidence, until one day she didn't even recognize the woman in the mirror. That's what silence does. It erodes your spirit one moment at a time. Peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of respect. If your silence allows disrespect to grow, then you're not protecting peace. You're protecting dysfunction. You're not weak because you speak up. You're not difficult because you set a boundary, and you're not aggressive because you demand to be treated with dignity. That's not conflict. That's clarity. That's strength. That's growth. Think about the times you've bitten your tongue in meetings, in relationships, in friendships, just to avoid making things worse. But didn't things still get worse? Because when you silence yourself, you train people to believe that your feelings are negotiable. You teach them that they can cross your lines without consequences. And worst of all, you teach yourself that your truth doesn't matter. I knew a woman who always said yes to family events, even when she was exhausted. She didn't want to disappoint anyone, but while everyone else was celebrating, she was breaking down. Until one day, she finally said no. And you know what happened? The world didn't end. People adjusted. And she finally felt what peace really tastes like. Not forced smiles and fake laughter, but authentic boundaries and deep breaths. You are not a doormat. You are not a peacekeeper at the cost of your own soul. Your voice was given to you for a reason. Not just to whisper dreams, but to defend them. Not just to say I love you, but also to say that hurt me. Not just to praise others, but to protect yourself. Conflict is not evil. Honesty is not rude. And truth is not unkind. In fact, some of the most powerful healing begins when a woman decides she will no longer betray herself for the comfort of others. When she stops nodding in agreement to things that tear her down. When she stops laughing at jokes that bruise her worth. When she stops shrinking just to make space for other people's egos. If you have to dim your light to be accepted, that room isn't meant for you. If you have to bite your tongue until it bleeds just to be loved, that isn't love. It's control wrapped in politeness. Speak even if your voice shakes. Say it even if your hands tremble. Because every time you stay silent for the sake of peace, you abandon yourself a little more. And trust me, no relationship, no job, no friendship is worth the cost of your authenticity. The version of you that everyone loves because she never speaks up, that version is a lie. And it's time to return to the real you. The woman who knows her worth, speaks her truth, and understands that real peace only comes when you stop making war with yourself. Stop chasing, start attracting. Because queens don't run after what is already meant for them. When you chase something, a man, a dream, a friend, a title, you're telling the universe, I'm not enough until I have this. And that energy, it's desperate, it's draining, and it pushes away the very thing you're dying to hold on to. But when you attract, when you become magnetic, you shift the entire game. You're no longer screaming for attention, you're commanding it in silence. A high-value woman knows this. Her presence speaks louder than her pursuit. She doesn't blow up phones, beg for clarity, or beg to be seen. She doesn't try to convince anyone of her worth. She simply is. And that's enough. I knew a woman who used to overtext men, constantly ask, where are we going? Show up uninvited, just to bump into him. She thought effort would buy her value. Until one day, she deleted his number, booked herself a solo vacation, and started pouring into her goals. And guess what? He started chasing. Why? Because nothing is more attractive than a woman who chooses herself. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So if you want love, become love. If you want loyalty, become loyal to yourself. If you want respect, stop tolerating disrespect from anyone, including yourself. It starts inside. The woman who wakes up, takes care of her body, reads, heals, laughs, creates, walks like a vision. She doesn't chase. She draws in everything aligned with her energy. Not because she's trying, but because she's becoming. I saw a woman chase success so hard, she lost herself. She burned out trying to prove something to people who weren't even watching. She finally sat down one day and said, what if I stop pushing and start trusting? That's when things began to flow. The opportunities, the invitations, the right people. Because when your energy is calm, your results are powerful. You don't have to force the door open when you're the key. You don't need to chase anyone who makes you feel like you're too much, too emotional, too intense. The right one will say, thank God I finally found you. But they won't see you if you're too busy morphing yourself into what you think they want. The woman who chases approval is always tired. But the woman who embodies her truth unapologetically is unforgettable. She walks into a room and doesn't need to ask for a seat at the table. She is the table. Ever notice how when you stop texting him, he suddenly starts checking in? When you stop explaining yourself to friends who constantly misunderstand you, they start asking, does this mean I'm disconnected? And I start asking, you start asking people to treat you differently. You start asking people to do differently. You start asking, what changed? That's the shift. That's the power of pulling back. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Not to punish, but to protect your peace. You don't have to beg to be chosen. You just have to stop betraying yourself to be picked. So focus on becoming. Become so fulfilled, so grounded, so radiant that anything not meant for you falls off on its own. That's when alignment happens. That's when attraction begins. And no, it's not about playing hard to get. It's about being so focused on your growth that nothing can distract you from your power. The woman who stops chasing is the woman who rises. And the woman who rises, she doesn't chase love, money, or validation. She attracts it all by simply standing tall in who she is. You've heard every word, now it's time to wear it like armor. Because a high-value woman doesn't just talk about her worth. She walks it, lives it, breathes it. She doesn't settle for half love, almost respect, or convenient attention. She doesn't entertain energy that drains her just because she's afraid to be alone. She knows that solitude isn't a punishment. It's where queens are crowned, boundaries are built, and standards are reinforced. You were not born to shrink yourself so someone else can feel tall. You were not made to be soft for hands that don't know how to hold power. You were not created to chase, beg, overextend, and stay silent just to be tolerated. You were built from fire, not to be extinguished, but to rise. Every single time, they will tell you, you're too much, too loud, too picky, too ambitious. Let them talk, because the woman they call too much is the same woman they secretly envy. She's the one who walks away from red flags while others paint them pink. She's the one who doesn't apologize for expecting effort, honesty, and respect. She's the one who doesn't flinch when silence becomes necessary. She's the storm they never saw coming, wrapped in elegance, crowned with resilience. Your power isn't in how many like you. Your power is in how many respect you, even when you say no, even when you walk away, even when you choose yourself. The most dangerous woman in the world is the one who doesn't fear losing people. She fears losing herself. And that's the kind of woman the world rises to meet. Let them misunderstand you. Let them judge your boundaries. Let them call your confidence arrogance. You're not here to fit into boxes built by fragile egos. You are not for everyone. And that is your superpower. The ones who see you, feel you, and match. You don't attract what you chase. You attract what you believe you deserve. So believe bigger. Love harder. Not just others, but yourself. Speak louder. Not just in rooms that listen, but in rooms that once silenced you. And walk taller. Not for them, but for the little girl inside you who once doubted her light. You are the fire and the force, the elegance and the earthquake, the calm and the storm. You are not here to beg. You are not here to break. You are here to build, blaze, and become. So remember this. They tried to bury you, but they didn't know you were a seed. Grow louder, shine brighter, stand taller. You've shed the old you, the one who apologized, chased, tolerated, and stayed small. Now, you rise, unapologetic, unshaken, unstoppable. Share, apogee. Some of you